Welcome to episode 93, live from San Francisco with a seat recap with first-timer Greg Oakford from Golf Victoria.
Welcome to the Sports Geek Podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who has attended 12 games at MLB stadiums. What's your number? Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. My name is Sean Callanan, and you are listening to the Sports Geek Podcast. You can find me on the Twitter at Sean Callanan or at Sports Geek, or the old-fashioned way via email, Sean, S-E-A-N, at sportsgeekhq.com. I'd love to hear your feedback. You're listening to the podcast. You may find it on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. I'm recording this live from my hotel suite at Western St. Francis. And first of all, I must start the podcast with a big congratulations and a well done to Christine Stoffel and the whole SEAT team for another successful SEAT conference. Plenty of great feedback. I love it at the end of the conference when people are saying it's the best SEAT ever. So again, big kudos and well done to Christine and the team. I will be giving multiple recaps of the conference with both people who were at the conference and also myself as I go through a few interviews. But what I wanted to do while I was still in San Francisco was catch up with someone that went to SEAT for the very first time and get their perspective rather than my perspective as a 5-time SEAT attendee. And so I was lucky enough there was a few Australians that turned up to SEAT this year, and Greg Oakford was one of them. Greg's from Golf Victoria, so we talk about his key takeaways from the conference, which tracks, which sessions he was jumping into, in a mix of digital and CRM, and he went to a few of the CXO tracks, and really loved Peter Sorkoff's presentation and conversation around the rebrand of the Atlanta Hawks. Then we talk a little bit about the fun time at AT&T Park, playing a little bit of softball with SEAT attendees. So let's get into it. Let's hear about Greg Oakford's SEAT experience, and I'll be back after the chat with Greg Oakford from Golf Victoria. Here we are at the Western St. Francis in San Francisco. It is Wednesday. Everything SEAT 2015 has been wrapped up, and we've just come back from a tour of Facebook and the new Facebook Building 20. I'm here with Greg Oakford from Golf Victoria, the Marketing and Communications Manager of Golf Victoria. He's just been through his first SEAT. Have you enjoyed it, Greg?
It's been fantastic, Sean. It's been I think we got here on Saturday, and there's been some great networking opportunities. Every big sports league or team, probably in America, the UK, and lots of representatives from Australia here this year as well. It's been great to really, I suppose, be with your peers in the industry and people that you can get a lot out of speaking to. There's been some fantastic discussions, some really huge things obviously happening with infrastructure over here and getting Wi-Fi in everywhere, and just really connecting sports fans everywhere.
So it's been a big trip, and I just wanted to, recap with you, because I can do a recap of SEAT, but I've been through it a few times, and so I'm grading it against, last year in Miami, and the good thing is, hey, you can hear me. I kept my voice this time. We started off Sunday. Went to Levi's Stadium. Got on the buses out there. What was your impressions of Levi's Stadium? What impressed you? What was the I was using when I was running all the panels. I used the same template that we do for Beers Blokes Business, and in sort of prepping them, I said, "What are your F-me moments?" And I wanted to make sure the panelists were delivering those in the same way that we do on Beers Blokes. And Greg has been a guest on Beers Blokes Business. What have been those F-me moments, especially starting with Levi Stadium?
I think Levi's Stadium doing I think there was 3 tour options that we were giving. I did the fan engagement one, and just seeing the sheer volume of equipment and screens and sheer volume of staff that they have just in their broadcast division is phenomenal. I'm sure if you did a tour of NBC that it'd be along the lines of that. So I was that was an F me moment for mine, and just the sheer volume of replay abilities they've got, and some of the technology is just incredible, and it's only getting better. And you look at something like Levi's Stadium, and it's obviously recently built. I was surprised how far away it was from actually downtown San Francisco, but it's
practically in San Jose.
It is, yeah. So it's interesting listening to the guys that took us on the tour around how their fan base demographics have essentially changed. So, they said they get a lot of people actually from Sacramento that come along. Obviously, you've got some very high net worth individuals around that area as well when you're talking about Silicon Valley area. But certainly the infrastructure of Levi's Stadium, you can see that they're going to be able to just continue to build on to that and build on, and it's amazing.
And they are. I was lucky enough to go to WrestleMania, and they were saying that helped them prep. They've got the Super Bowl 50 coming up, and they're still rolling out new parts of the stadium and new ways to engage the fans. So, terrific facility. It was really good of the Venue Next guys and that to host us. Agree. The broadcast facilities and that, and the fact that the amount of people that were taking photos and then seeing their Instagrams on the massive screen were pretty cool. And then seat proper from a Monday Tuesday point of view. What kind of sessions were you going into? What were the really interesting discusussions?
Well, as you mentioned before, being my first seat conference, I wasn't exactly sure what the format was going to be. There's a little bit of issues with the iPhone app at the start. And,
the iPhone app was not approved, but we eventually the call was made to Apple, and I had nothing to do with it being held up, despite the rumours.
I would suggest otherwise, but moving on from that. But no, I think it was good that I didn't realise how many I suppose IT guys that would be here as well as I suppose the digital marketing side of things. But I found the digital marketing tracks, we call them over here. I don't know. You might want to explain to our Aussie listeners what a track is, because I'm not sure if we would call it back home a track.
Yeah, a track or a stream, but they were effectively called a track. People have listened to the podcast as a digital track that I help curate as running the digital steering committee, and then you've got guys like Charlie Shin running and really working the CRM track for all the data guys, and then you've got the original seat guys, all the IT, CIO, and they're very much in the hardware and the Wi-Fi and the DAS and all that kind of stuff. And you've got experienced people like Todd Cathlish from the Red Wings and Katie Panther from Madison Square Garden, and they're driving. They're driving the agenda. The key bit with seat is that the steering committee are the people that put it together. So, it does make for a tough choice when you come as a one person. That's why I tell people to bring 3 people so you can cover all the bases. So you would have been spoiled for choice to go. Do I go into the digital track to hear guys talk about risk and reward, and that was I love that discussion. That was really fun. Or do you go into the CRM one, and then we also had the CXO which was a new track, which was really built for chief revenue officers, chief marketing officers, guys that at that C level to have some of those bigger discussions. And I was unfortunate I wasn't able to clone myself and jump into some of those sessions, but you had the luxury of going from a couple of sessions. What were some of your highlights?
Yeah, so I went to primarily the digital marketing ones and the CXO ones. The CXO ones, there was a couple in particular that were really good. I might mispronounce his last name here, but
it's pretty much as you think it will sound.
So Peter Sorkoff.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
And hopefully I did speak to Peter, and hopefully we'll have Peter on the podcast soon. Pete, tell everyone where Peter's from.
So Peter is from the Atlanta Hawks. He's the Senior Vice President and Chief Creative Officer. So it's a nice little title there, Chief Creative Officer.
There's one thing that SEAT does not lack. It's for the diversity in titles. There's digital, there's marketing, the directors and VP. I did joke with Christine because everyone had their handles on the badges, and I'm not a big one for titles, and I think it's more of maybe a bit more of an Australian thing. Mainly the fact that I'm running my own company, and my thing is, well, do I say founder? Do I just say sports geek or whatever? But I think we should bring in dynamic pricing on the number of letters you have in your job title. And I think Christine would make a little bit more money on the registrations, but that's not mocking Peter, because he is one of the most switched on guys Met him last year in Miami, and he just joined in some of the conversations. But yeah, all I heard was, did you go to the Atlanta Hawks panel? Peter Sorkoff was amazing.
Yeah. No, he was phenomenal. I felt like that was probably the best presentation I saw for the whole week, and probably have a little bit of a bias being a basketball fan myself, but I always wondered too, knowing the Atlanta Falcons has got a pretty good following, and the Hawks seem like one of those NBA teams that's in a relatively big market, but they've always kind of had this stench about them. And over the last couple of years, as we've seen, both on the court and off the court, they've really turned that around, and it was great to listen to Peter how they've turned it around off the court. And he took it a few steps back before he got into the nitty-gritty, and he said they did a big report. I think he said something like an 80-page executive summary. He said he didn't know how that happened, but they actually bought data off the NSA. They said that you're able to do old data. They did a sentiment analysis of, I think he said 1.7 million conversations on social media over, say, the last 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
And he said, in a nutshell, he brought out a lot of different findings, but he said, in a nutshell, the takeaway for his CEO was the Atlanta community were completely and emotionally disengaged from the Hawks, and he cited everything from that. The perception was they give up too easily. They had a couple of players in particular he actually named. He didn't say they were necessarily bad guys, but the perception of I think it was Joe Johnson and Josh Smith wasn't great in the Atlanta community. And he also mentioned that trading Dominique Wilkins to the Clippers, say 25 years ago, was still eating away at the Atlanta people. And so essentially their tagline was, I'm just trying to remember, I think it was religion, then retail. That's what it was, religion, then retail. So essentially that philosophy was around, and he went over the discussions that he had with his marketing team and season ticket salespeople, and said, we've got to stop hitting these people up just saying buy, where are the Atlanta Hawks, you should just buy. He said, we need to actually build this brand, and people want to buy rather than keep being sold to. And some of the strategies that he put in place were just, they're not all coming to mind right now.
That's all right. Like I said, I'm going to have Peter on, so I don't want you to do a complete recap. But yeah, he is a really switched on guy. It was great. Watching it from afar, because he was talking a little bit about some of that stuff last year, and to see it be rolled out. The new logo, the stuff they're doing in stadium with the projections. The tweaks of the brand, new jerseys, all of that kind of stuff, but all in alignment with what they're trying to do. I heard nothing but good stuff. And any others as far as other sessions that really hit the mark? Yeah,
absolutely. I think there was another CXO one with the Chicago Cubs yesterday, and that was quite good as well. They'd gone through some changes, and I think the Warriors yesterday was good. Also, the 49ers, I think he was an English guy yesterday in the digital marketing track. That was good. A lot of the content stuff for me was really good. You hosted a couple yourself, and just seeing what people are doing in that space. And I think for me personally, in a smaller organisation compared to a lot of the ones that we were around this week, but it was good to see what the elite organisations are actually doing. Obviously, they've got a lot more resources, but I think you can, even speaking to Kevin from the Canucks on the way to Facebook today, we were actually speaking about having smaller organisations and just, trying to, I suppose, scale it back to a degree and see what's feasible to implement in your own business. So, yeah. I
think Paul Greenberg's session where he brought in, some massive heavy hitters in CRM, and Ray Wang sort of said, you guys are you're a small business but you've got a massive brand. They're not aligned. Yep. Like you've got a brand that's as big as Coca-Cola and those kind of things with some of the teams, but the teams behind the teams are nowhere near. They don't match the big brands. So it's an opportunity of scale that sports has to figure out, trying to get that match to reach what their brands are doing. But yeah, for mine, it's as much the conversations. Monday was was a really hectic day for me. Getting the welcome out of the way and then doing my keynote, and then I think I spoke from like 8:30 to 1:30. I did every session. It was good fun. I love doing it. I really enjoyed, and I think I will get Aaron LaValle back on and Dwayne Hankins, and I'm definitely chasing down Melissa from the Jets. The conversation that we had with that risk and reward, sort of talking about the sort of pivoting off the Rockets, horse emoji, how much is too much, and it was good having different opinions in the room on, what you can do, what you can't do. For those that are listening at home or jogging somewhere, we polled the room on whether, what you would do if one of your employees sent off that emoji tweet from the Rockets, and it was probably about 60-40 against. That said, where do you? I mean, and both Dwayne and I said no, we were okay with it by tomorrow. It's nothing. Where would you sit?
I was with Dwayne and yourself. I felt like it was a little bit harsh to sack the guy because as a social media manager and a guy that creates content, sometimes you want to toe that line. And in reality, what's going to happen is when you're towing the line, you are going to step over it once. So to fire him, and it seems like he's a pretty well-respected person within the industry, I thought was a bit harsh. But I can understand it from the other perspective as well.
Yeah, so. I mean, the point that I think Dwayne made, and I agree with, is that you can't say to someone, here's some rope, go and be innovative, give it some edge, and then after the fact, draw a line. I think that was the bit. If they had have just left it, it would have got some press, but they would have. They would have just moved on. So yeah. I think they probably made it bigger than it was. But each to their own. You don't know the full backstory. But if you're taking it as an isolated incident, you never know.
And Dwayne, just touching on that too, and I think Dwayne made a point which I don't know if I necessarily wholeheartedly agree with when he said for the Rockets social media manager, he said he's tweeting for his fans. So so whatever anyone else thinks, it doesn't matter. And I think that's for me.
In a team sport and a rivalry sport, it does. I think it fits because you are, if you're talking about fan engagement, you're talking about fan engagement of your fans, And Dwayne comes from the experience of the LA Kings and the tweets that they did around their Stanley Cup run, which their fans loved and everyone hated. He's not selling tickets and merch to the people who don't like the Kings. But you still have to have lines around how far is too far. Does this fit for our brand and that kind of thing? And that's where it was good to have that discussion of, a bit of backwards and forwards with people like Melissa at the Jets and Andrew Nicholson from the Kings, because it doesn't fit for everybody. No, not everyone can be this bold and brash. And even Dwayne said himself that it's a different feel in Portland. They are the big team in town. They weren't we're at their position in their market a lot differently than the Kings are. So. It's a matter of finding your own voice, but it's always good to have that conversation with people, to know they're having the same problems, and that's the thing for me at Seat. Once you dive into the conversations and you go, you're having similar issues, and at different scale. At Golf Victoria, you're a small team, but then you go and talk to some of the NCAA, the college teams, and they are running super lean, super lean operations. Yes. They might have a swag of students to work for them, but the actual people who are fully in charge, they're running with 1 to 3 people and servicing just as big a market as some of these pro teams.
And that was another interesting point about Seat, and you bring up the NCAA and seeing how some of their operations are run so lean, but even someone like I've got his.
Greg's
just reaching for the business card over here on the desk, but Danny Martinez, who's one of the social media managers for the Miami Heat, who I spent a little bit of time with yesterday, and just I think they have something like 16, 17 million Facebook followers, and obviously their other platforms are just as enormous as well. Yep. And I think there's 2 people that work those platforms, and so you're thinking Miami Heat, one of the biggest sporting brands in the world, and they get hammered during the season. So it was really interesting to see the faces behind the platforms.
Yeah, definitely, and that's the thing. I mean, from a resourcing point of view, I think 2 or 3 are probably needed to manage a lot of social, at a league level. We know with the AFL and the NRL, they'll like run a staggered scheduled, so people are covering on weekends and stuff. But you can normally cover all the bases in that space. But it's just a matter of then what can you do around the edges, and that's important. The other part of SEAT is always the networking events. We spoke earlier about Levi, and then last night we went out to AT&T Park. You want to take us through that? What were some of the highlights of that?
Absolutely. So for the listeners out there that are not aware, we went to the AT&T Park, which is the home of San Francisco Giants. It's about 2 miles from where we are here at the Western Hotel. It's a fantastic location, similar to the MCG kind of being plonked right in the heart of Melbourne. You can be in a bar and go out to the game, and it's an impressive stadium. I actually thought it looked older than what it was. I think we had the conversation last night, Sean. We were doing a little bit of a tour, and I think you said it was probably around 15 years old. We may be a little off there. We might be a couple of years either side. So
the Giants used to play at Candlestick Park, and it is the trend. And I think AT&T was probably one of the first ones to build a new stadium, but do it in an old style.
Yeah.
So it does give it that age. But we were lucky enough to play a game of softball. So we had the 4 of the tracks: the IT track and the collegiate track and
data.
CRM, the data track, and digital track, all formed teams. So it was a friendly game of softball. The event staff at the Giants did a tremendous job getting everyone's names up on the lineup correctly for every game. It was a lot of fun. I was lucky enough to get a hit. I tried to play without a glove. But I missed a ball horribly, and then they demanded that I have a glove. But I think I found out that I'm a designated hitter because I did get a double, and then I stole a base, and then I scored a run. So, and then I said I am done because the calves started to ping, and the last thing I wanted to do was another Achilles. So, Team Data beat the CIOs in game 1. Team Digital, I should say. I was in Team Digital. We won our first game, and then you were playing on Russell Scabetti's Team Data?
Yes, I'd been selected to Team Data, and we won our first game. They originally had me at first base, and after a few practice balls with, I can't remember her name, but she was an absolute gun. I think she'd played a little bit of softball in college, and we made a switch. I became the catcher, so that worked well. But no, it was a fantastic opportunity out there, and I was very surprised of almost the run of the joint that they gave us. You could have a couple of beers out there on the field. You could kick the footy round. And
so there was a few activations happening. They had the Oculus Rift set up, doing virtual tours of the stadium. I think you got the baseball card also, and then did the tour of AT&T as well.
Yep. Now there was a lot of activity going on. There would have been 300, 400, 500 people there last night.
And that's the thing; it doesn't look big when you've only got a small amount of people. But we got through 4 games. Since I decided to call the end to my softball career, I was very lucky and I saw an open mic. And I don't mind grabbing a mic if there's one around. I'd pretty much spoken for the last 3 days at SEAT. So Tom was one of the commentators, and I asked if I could come down and commentate the game between our 2 teams, Team Data and Team Digital, to see who would win in the championship game. And I tell you what, I almost had just as much fun with the microphone with Tom that I did getting the hits. So both teams had to play back to back. Team Data went through on a tiebreaker, and then the championship game, Team Digital prevailed. So it was a absolutely fun night. I mean, and for yourself to be running around on AT&T?
It was great. Look, I didn't have as much success with the bat as you did. I think I had foul ball, and then top one up and got caught. But no, it was good. It was good to get out there, field a little bit. And it was a fantastic opportunity.
And then just to wrap up, because I try to provide the full experience for a tour, and I'd organised to go down to Facebook to catch up with Bob Morgan, who used to be who was with Sportstream when they were acquired, and doing a lot of the work behind the scenes for for seeing what's happening on Facebook around big events and sports and TV and stuff like that. And we were lucky enough to get a bit of a tour of the Facebook campus, the former Sun Microsystems campus. And if you look at my Facebook page, you can see that the Facebook sign has actually been flipped over. The Sun Microsystems sign has been flipped over as a bit of a nod to the past. And I think Bob said that a few relics are there to sort of keep the Facebook crowd moving and keep innovating. Otherwise, they might end up like a Sun Microsystems. And then we were lucky enough to go to the phenomenal Building 20. How awesome was that?
Yeah, it was. The whole tour was fantastic, and Bob was very generous, and we had a few people there. And I was probably the key takeaways for me were I was surprised by the lack of actual Facebook branding, besides the thumbs up, which we got obviously the standard tourist picture at the end with. But and I actually asked Bob the question, and he said, for them it's not really necessarily about the Facebook brand; it's about connecting people. But the takeaway for me was how resourceful they were with some of their infrastructure. Obviously, they've spent a lot of money building those buildings, but using the back of the sign and the unfinished look in certain parts of the building, and I think it just it really had this feeling of fostering creativity and innovation, which obviously is what they're trying to achieve. So you could see how people could get really in those creative minds there. It really had all the setup to foster that. Yeah,
I mean, the lack of branding is one thing, but it's also, and it's something that I'm going to catch up with Rob Scilliciotti potentially in New York, sort of recap the trip that we did prior to Seton. One of the things that we did see was in pretty much without fail, every organisation we went to had its brand and its brand values, just plastered across, whether the lobby or the hall, like it was pervasive. It was throughout the organisation. And I think Facebook does that via the posters. Like, so they've got a print shop on campus. I'm trying to think, it's Facebook, there's something Labs. I will look it up. And they're always printing, so you've seen those posters, ship fast, ship often, all of those ones around the mentality, that hacker mentality, the fact that there was hack written in the concrete. If you do nothing, nothing happens. That was an awesome poster. Or let's kick the shit out of option B, right? And that was they take sayings from around the office. In that case, that was from Sheryl Sandberg and her recent events and sad events of that. But they've taken that and sort of made it a position of strength. So, that is their branding. Like, that is their that is their value. That is their culture. So, we saw that in a lot of the sports teams that we met with, but it was just everywhere. So, that was fascinating, and you just come away, and I was lucky enough to be there in March. You come away thinking about how you can, you have that hacker's mentality. How can you do it? Actually, came up with a really cool idea with Kevin in the Uber home that I'm not going to release in the podcast because we've got to get Bob to sign an NDA before we send it back to him. But it's an awesome idea, and it's just sort of that environment that gets you going. So, what's now one of the things that's the hardest thing coming away from a conference like this, because you're like all pumped up. What are some of the things that are really exciting you going back to Golf Victoria that you're going to walk back in the door and go, this is what I'm going to get started on. This is a focus. This is what I'm fired up about. Yeah, well, I think the thoughts around the rooms throughout the whole week, and it was interesting when you surveyed people around where their marketing spend is going, and for us as a whole organisation, we'd still be skewed towards spending less on digital than your traditional forms, and it's probably been my ambition to move that, and tip the scales the other way anyway. But I think this week has solidified that. You have to play in that space. Just seeing what things are on the horizon for certain teams, and granted, like we mentioned before, some of them are highly resourced, but I think you've got to start playing in that space now, and you've got to start playing around with it. And I know that from a content creation standpoint, there's some things that I'm really excited about giving a shot at when I get back into the office. Absolutely. I mean, and the thing is, it's from a digital spend point of view, it is a matter of moving it from column A to column B, but it also is a matter of doing tactical spends, and it's not massive budgets. Even when you're talking to, and I love Kevin's line of, organic is organic and paid is paid. If you want to get results that have been paid for, whether it be sponsorship or ticketing, it makes sense that's what you should do. And again, talking Facebook, that's how the algorithm is working. That's what Facebook wants you to do. It makes sense, but it does take time to get that mentality. Getting to yes. And it was a great having that last session with guys like, Peter. Dan Magala did a great job with that session, but having guys like Peter Sorkoff from the Hawks, and then having digitally savvy guys like Shane Harmon there, that is is a CEO that is approving these kind of things, helping more people get to that. And it is a matter of going away to places like this, being inspired, and then going back and saying, well, this is what the Portland Trailblazers have done. They've moved all their marketing budget from here to here. Here's what the Jets are doing. Here's what the the Hawks are doing. And here's why they're doing it. And here's the results they're doing it. It gives you a little bit more credibility. Is not the right word, but pretty more cases to say this is the way we want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that another takeaway from the week was it's still been a challenge for the likes of the Peters from the Atlanta Hawks to have that kind of change management within their organisation as well. So you really for someone that doesn't play in the digital space, it might be in say game development, and it can be in golf, it could be in tennis. Tom from British Tennis, I'm sure has the same issues, and it's just I suppose trying to get people. And I think we discussed this in one of the digital marketing tracks, is trying to get your whole organisation as a whole to really embrace and understand to a certain degree why you need to be in this area. Yeah,
that panel talking about getting digital horizontal across the organisation is a problem that not a problem or is an issue across many companies. Here and in Australia and the UK. I'm really looking forward to the report. The digital maturity report out of the surveys that were done at SEAT. Just some of the initial findings were really fascinating on how mature people think from a digital spend point of view. Are they emerging? Are they not there yet? Because it'll give people a better picture of where they sit in the matrix, but then also know that there are people that have got there, and it sort of gives a bit of proof if you are going up to a CMO or a CEO in any case, to sort of prove it. So I guess the last question is are you going to be back for SEAT 2016? Because it's going to be in Las Vegas.
Well, yes, I will be. The short answer is yes.
Well, exactly, and that's and I think that is the case. I mean, and I did say earlier in the week, this is why I have been banging on, preaching, spruiking. You can use whatever adjective you like, but it's really the people that make the conference, and all kudos to the steering committee. I get a lot of credit for a lot of things in the digital track, but that does not come together without the steering committee, and it definitely doesn't come together without the work that Christine did. And I really can't go talking about this year's SEAT without a massive shout out to Kylie Cafflish. I think she did an amazing job driving all the social. We're going to check with the guys from Zoomf and probably Tradable Bits on some of the stats from social. But when you can get a hashtag trending in San Francisco, you're doing okay. So yeah, SEAT 2015 has been a big success, and thank you very much for Greg for coming along. And I'll see you back in Melbourne, and definitely back for SEAT 2016.
Absolutely. And probably just my final remarks, I just want to say thank you to all of the SEAT attendees, because I think the amount of information sharing they did, they certainly were not closed off to being as transparent as possible with everything they were doing, which I don't know if you would get necessarily back home in a similar situation. I think some people and some teams, organisations can be a little bit guarded, and I think the openness and the sharing at SEAT was one of the most phenomenal parts about the whole conference.
Terrific. Thanks a lot, Greg.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to Greg Oakford from Golf Victoria. You can follow Greg, funnily enough, at Greg Oakford on the Twitter. Send him a tweet, ask him Ask him what you thought of Seat Conference if you did attend, and if you didn't attend, ask him why you should attend next year. 2016 in Las Vegas will be pretty compelling. One thing I do want to do is thank, and do it sort of on behalf of Christine, is to thank the seat sponsors, the major platinum and title sponsors. Extreme Networks, who we heard from last year on the podcast. I'm going to do a podcast with them later in the year. Also Core Software, Russell Scabetti. I'm going to hopefully catch up with Russell while I'm in New York and talk to him about his transition from the team side of things with the New York Jets over to the vendor side of things at Core Software, but the CRM track is very much indebted to Russell's work. So very, very thankful that Core Software are on board with Seat. Mobility, again, spoke to Mobility last year on the podcast. Going to talk to them about what they've been doing the last 12 months. AmpThink, and also SignalShare. You would have heard from Joe and SignalShare with the Detroit Red Wings episode. So I'll be doing a I'll be doing a podcast with all those Seat sponsors. I want to say thank you to them, both on behalf of me and on behalf of Christine. And I also want to put a big shout out to Kylie Kaflish. Kylie was running all things social. If you weren't at Seat and were trying to follow along and seeing what was happening and looking at all the pictures coming through, that was Kylie driving that, running from room to room, from level 32 down to the Tower Salon on the bottom level. You can follow her at Kylie Kaflish. She's now on the lookout for a role within a sports team, and I would be reaching out to her via Twitter, connecting with her on LinkedIn. Be well worthy addition to any sports team. And the good thing for you, the listeners of Sports Geek, I've got a big list of guests coming up. I was just going through my Twitter feed and going through my business cards that I acquired over the couple of days at Seat, and the list is at about 20 or 30. So maybe the next 6 or 7 months worth of interviews have been queued up. But looking forward to catching up with people from teams such as the Vancouver Canucks, New York Jets, Madison Square Garden. Hopefully I can organise that with Katie, and many more. So got a long list, and I'm looking forward to chasing up some of them next week when I'm in New York, and looking forward to obviously Seat 2016. The registrations for 2016 Seat will be opening shortly. We just got to let Christine have a little bit of sleep post the event and recharge your batteries. But 2016 in Las Vegas will be a hot ticket. I know, speaking to a lot of attendees this year, they were looking forward to next year's event already. And the other thing I wanted to say is I want to say a big thank you to all of those people who, one, said thank you for what I did from an MC point of view throughout the conference, but then also I was, again, absolutely humbled by the people that came up and said that they were a podcast listener. As you know, if you've been listening to the podcast for the last 2 years, I do build the Sports Geek podcast for you, for the people working in sports business, working in digital marketing, working in CRM. I build it specifically for you. I don't build it for anyone else. If anyone else is listening and wants to get into the space or just likes marketing and likes sports, I'm happy to have you as a listener. But if you're asking me to draw my target customer are the people who are attending Seats. So I was really, really humbled to, one, meet some more listeners and just hear some of your feedback. So again, if you listen to the podcast, as always, I do the quick shout out. You can leave a review on iTunes, going to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. I appreciate that. But even more so, I'd love it if you either send me an email, Sean@sportsgeekhq.com, or send me a tweet at Sean Callanan. I'd love to connect and know who is listening to the podcast. And I'd love you to join the Sports Geek Podcast Facebook group. The conversation that's happening in there is really good. Completely different to what happens on a Facebook page. A bit of backwards and forwards, people talking about different campaigns and activations. It's a really good way to connect. And if you did attend Seat 2015 and didn't have the opportunity to go to see my presentation, you can get my slides in advance before the full master deck comes out from Seat by simply texting. And this actually worked quite well. I've been using Lead Pages and their Lead Digits product to allow people simply to SMS to opt into a list. So you can do that in the US by simply texting Sports Geek, all one word. Normally I would force a space in between those two words because it's two words to me. But simply text Sports Geek to 33444. That's 33444. And never fear, you know me, if anyone is on the Sports Geek news list, you will get a copy of that. But if you want to get it right now, simply text Sports Geek to 33444. Well, that's it from me from San Francisco. Until next episode, which I may record in New York City, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.
Find all Sports Geek podcasts at sportsgeekhq.com/SGP. Want to maximize returns from your digital team? Contact Sports Geek about content and commercialization workshop. Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. Thanks for listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.